Copyright Stanford University, all rights reserved.
So this is our 14th seminar, I think. And Ames is a growing group. We have already 280 people in LinkedIn, and I invite you all to join us and help yourself to get familiar with the entrepreneurial world and with the industry and make your connections with Ames. And today's speaker is Avi Yaron. I saw Avi in an Israeli biotech day, and I thought his story is very interesting, and I wanted to share it with you. He has 20 years of experience in the management and entrepreneurship world. He co-founded Mototech, which was a company that deals with ignitions of motorcycles. That was right. Yeah, and at 1998, he founded Visionsense, and he's the CTO of the company, and he'll tell you all about it. Please help me welcome him.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. I had another company in the middle, 802.11, Wi-Fi. So thank you, Karen, for inviting. I will try to bore you as much as I can in this hour. Please feel free to interfere, ask. You know, the more you ask, the better it is. I'm here to serve and to hopefully provide some of the little experience that I have, you know, to try and maybe lower your barriers. My background is electrical engineering and MBA, the standard, and I am a serial entrepreneur. Never thought of entering any medical business whatsoever, up to the point that I had, and this is a real story, I had a Ducati, and I had a small accident on the highway when I was only 28 years old, and they found out that I had an inoperable brain tumor. So after having a great career, you know, in the army and university and excelling, I understood that I'm going to die and that's it. Obviously, I couldn't really agree with that, and I started learning medicine and flying all over the world. And after 6 years, passing 4 surgeries in New York, Germany, Israel, and all that, I understood the downsides of the equipment that they had, and I invented a solution that works much better. Really, I'm really cutting it short. Okay, so this is my surgery was even on CNN. It took 2 days with that complicated. And when you look at neurosurgeries, typically they're too invasive, and just while paving your way as a surgeon to the lesion already creates deficits and complications. And the issue is how can you really invade, especially with deep-seated lesions, in a less invasive fashion. And all the equipment that exists to date are microscopes like these, you know, like the beginning of the century, a huge monster optomechanical that demands a relatively big opening. And I, with my electronics background, I created a small chip that basically mimics a combination of an insect eye and a mammal eye, and that provided the needed stereoscopic 3D perception at very, very, very small sizes. I mean, it's just a few millimeters. I can pass it around if you wish. It's just a 3.3 millimeter chip inside. And after 13 years and lots of white hair and lots of trouble, it's a small one, not the big one. The company, I would say, is pretty successful. I was CEO for 13 years. And now that the company is doing well, I brought on board a professional American CEO that not only doesn't have the accent, but also knows what he's doing. This is our system. In really short, that's like $100,000 for the system in the operating room, and every camera, it's a stereoscopic camera, it's $24,000 that lasts only 40 procedures, so it's a pretty good business. Overall, the company is 13 years. It sells now worldwide, US, Europe, Far East, and considering non-medical markets. And this is the picture that I love, that you can see that all this, instead of, like, I was opened all the way here. I don't have any brain on all my left frontal lobe, and now they perform this procedure through the nose. I was 2 days in the operating room 1 week hospitalization and 6 months of recuperation, and now it's next day you're going home through the nose, and that's it. So that's in a nutshell about, I'm not here to talk about Visionsense, I just wanted to provide it as a background to my lecture, or hopefully discussion today, of what takes to be an entrepreneur, what takes to be a successful entrepreneur, and the price that you have to pay. Nothing comes without a price. Yeah, please. Could you say your name?
Alec. I'm
Alec.
Computer Science. Small technical question. Why do you choose CCD instead of CMOS?
We have both. We have CCD and CMOS.
Okay. CMOS is lower power, keeps it cool.
At these very, very small pixel size, CMOS will have higher crosstalk.
Yeah.
So with the HD cameras that we have, if you saw there is a big one, that's a CMOS, and the small one is a CCD. That's a pure image quality issue, and as CMOS will improve, and I assume that we might have also small CMOSs. We have both. It's,
yeah, backlighting CMOS is pretty good too.
It's very good. It's very good, and we're working on that now, definitely. Yeah. There's still a big crosstalk issue in very small pixels, still unsolved.
Are you at the diffraction limit, or what's happening?
We are at the diffraction limit, yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah.
is this color? Are you using colored lenses? Or?
Yeah. No, the lenses are not color, but we're using a colored
The
sensor.
sensor, right? Yeah.
Not bare, complementary in this case, but yeah. I mean, everything is not conventional, but the same principle. So the question is it, yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I just...
No, with pleasure.
You kind of grazed over this bug eye and 2D like it was just, a common idea. I don't feel like it is. Is this something that you, from your field, that seemed like a natural step, or was there like an aha moment? I mean, how did you come up with that? Because it sounds like this is your core technology, right? Figuring out how to miniaturize this, or is this more that you taking a bunch of different technologies that are out there and really synthesizing them?
What's your name?
Jordan.
Jordan. How do you typically invent? How this aha moment? When does it come? So I probably have 15 patents easily, and I can not generalize. On some ideas I thought while showering. I have no idea why. This idea took me months and months of brainstorming. I wish it would have been easy, and I basically used my communication knowledge. Now I can explain it. With the insect eye, little did I know about that back then. That was an explanation that I came up when I needed to explain it to VCs. And when I gave the long technological explanation, I just lost them. And it's not that they will tell you, we lost you. They will say, yeah, and you'll never see them again. So I had to come up with this bug eye story, and they loved it. And to this day, I still use it. But the technical explanation is that you need to multiplex two views, right and left, on one sensor. After probably 2 years of research to understand why companies like Zeiss, Olympus, that are amazing in their field, why did they fail and they were not able to reduce the size of their huge microscope to endoscopic dimensions. And I met many of them, and they didn't know either, okay? So, and again, I'm not an optical guy, I'm not a neuro anything guy, I'm communications. So it took me a long time to learn, to study, and to, you use your intuition because you don't really know. And I guess the issue related to the fact that the brain is very sensitive to a difference between the two eyes, and while with big optics you could relatively easily control the vertical shift, aberrations, distortions, magnifications, etc. Once you decrease the size of the optics, it's very difficult, up to impossible. And that was my guess. And I knew for sure that I'm not going to be better than Zeiss or Olympus with optics, but I'm probably better with them in semiconductors. So I used my semiconductor knowledge and my communication knowledge and started thinking, and now again I'm simplifying it, how can I multiplex these two channels over one? And when you hear radio, that's multiplexing of two channels over one, right? When you look at TV, that's anything is multiplexing. So, I mean, it took me many, many months. And then I understood that I thought that if I'll have it on one sensor, I'll eliminate all these issues. I patented every method that I could think of multiplexing two channels over one. So whether it's, I called it area domain multiplexing, meaning a slice for the right, slice for the left, slice for the right, slice for the left, or time domain, meaning having like two pupils and switching, or spectral domain, illuminating different wavelengths. I just filed patents like crazy, not really knowing what would be the right direction. And the right direction relates not only to a good result, I mean, that would work, it's also to the technologies that are available, to the efforts, meaning time and cost, to develop such a solution, right? And again, you don't know what you don't know. So I guessed, you know. And I was very lucky that my guess was right. And up to this day, we're still using the original guess. So I chose the area domain multiplexing. A little did I know how advantageous it is, or that other methods would be problematic. Did I answer?
Very well.
Maybe relating also, I'm always asked about, you filed patents, you have to seek investors. When is the right time, and what should you disclose? So I can only provide my personal perspective, and it may be very, very different with others, but my personal experience was that VCs are relatively conservative, and the more far-fetched your idea is, unless you really get someone that knows this field very well, and that's an exception, you will have to work hard and prove it to them. So in my case, I met a few VCs early on, I mean in Visionsense, because in LDAT communications, that was Wi-Fi, that was very easy to raise money. But with Visionsense, when I met, I couldn't meet with technological VCs because they said that the medical is a very small market, and I couldn't meet with medical VCs because they had no clue in semiconductors and algorithms. So I was just stuck, not here, not there. So I basically funded this endeavor from my own pocket for a year and a half. I hired a team, and we developed, a table, of course, filed all the patents, and I still had to pass more surgeries, and basically built a huge tabletop feasibility prototype that proved that this idea works. And based on that, I was able to raise $4 million. That's how it all started. So I founded the company in July 98, but closed the round only in last quarter of 99. Okay, again, it may be typical, maybe not. The typical entrepreneur will try to find friends and family. I didn't want to do that, and I preferred to, spend my own money. But that's, the nice thing about management is that there is no right and wrong, and each case has a different solution. And it's not that you can open some textbook and read the right answer, right? You should use your knowledge and intuition to figure it out. So in my case, I didn't want to waste the time, and I didn't want to take money from people that I really liked, and I didn't want to have relatively unprofessional investors on my board. That's it. How many of the patents, 2 minutes, okay? How much of the patents should you disclose? So I had really unique patents, and up to this date, that's 13 years, we still have no competition. It's that crazy. I was very, I think that when it relates to management, you should be conservative, okay? And I did not agree to show my patents to any VC, okay? And when they insisted, and of course the last thing that you want to do is insult them, so I told them that I can show them the schemes, but I will not show them the claims, okay? Because the huge fear is that someone will read your claims, she will find some hole and go and file some other patent. Not that I think that VCs are going to compete and file patents, but you never know where is it going to leak to. And in my Army service, I was a lieutenant in the intelligence force, and I know how much information leaks, okay? It's just insane. You wouldn't believe. So I preferred, you better be safe than sorry. So if they insisted, I showed them the tabletop. I used to show them some schemes, but I tried without insulting them to avoid it as much as I can. And I think only in one case they insisted, and I showed them all the schemes, but without the claims, and that was good enough for them. And that was because, once you file the patent, it's still confidential for at least year and a half, and I never disclosed whether I filed CIPs, continuation in part. I never, up to this date, disclose any patents that are pending, that are not published, because I'm always fearful that some competition will bypass, and it happens all the time. I mean, I'm not a paranoid. I know many companies that worked with a strategic partner, disclosed their patents, and 2 years after that, they found out that they're blocked, and they were bought for cheap. I know not one and not two, many more, yeah. So anything that relates to IP, and IP is not just patents, it's know-how, anything that relates to your unique knowledge, keep it very, very close to the chest. Okay? Yeah, please.
The question is directly related.
But what's your name?
Natalie question, in the School of Medicine.
Okay.
So you said you filed a bunch of patents. What were you planning to do? Your pay for the lawyers?
Yeah. Okay, very, very good question. Thank you. So first of all, when you look at it, as a startup, when you file patents, it's not to sue others. It's to show your unique IP and to be able to raise sufficient capital at a sufficient valuation, okay? I would say that any startup that will even think of suing any other company will go out of business for two reasons. A, the millions that it will take. It's not only about the money, it's the management attention and focus. You will have to devote at least a year, if not 2 years, to this war, okay? This is one. B, when you look at patents and the big companies, if they will infringe, it will be at a much, much, much later stage, okay? Much later stage. So I know it now. I didn't know it back then, okay? I'm not afraid of the big companies, and it's always cheaper for them to license our technology with the 13 years of experience that we have and the tens of millions that we spent on the development versus to start developing it on their own, okay? That's the principle definitely of American companies. Maybe in the Far East you can't really trust, but with American companies, as long as your IP is well protected, I would say today, with all the patents that we have, I feel very confident and I share everything. I would never sue, never, ever, no matter what, any company, okay? Now, if you're like Visionsense, a company that invented a new field, I would say that on one hand, we're enjoying great revenues and margins because we're the only ones with no competition, with a product that is really needed in the market. So we're maybe laughing all the way to the bank. On the other hand, we're also crying because there's a demand that we, this still small company, will have to educate the market of the advantages. So we have courses for surgeons. I mean, it costs a lot of money to fly them, to have other surgeons teaching them. That's a serious burden. And sometimes I'm wondering that perhaps if we had some big competitor, maybe they would have done some of the education and we would have benefited. Okay, so I don't know, whatever you do is never right? But I would say my principle in life is as an engineer and a CEO, never enter court, never ever. I mean, it's going to cost you so much money. You will only lose. Even if you win this whoever you sued 2 years after, you lost 2 years of your life, of your company's life. Perhaps you lost the window of opportunity that closed. So unless you're a lawyer and you love suing, etc., I mean, if you're an entrepreneur and you're into building and establishing and developing, I would prefer to fight other fields, on the technological side, not on the. I would say for me, it's very, very black and white. And when you look at startups that just, put one foot in the door of the court, they're doomed. And even big companies, when they get even sued by the SEC, etc., they look at their financials 2 years down the road, and you'll see how much they're so hurt because all the management has to deal with this risk. Okay? So patents are to gain the appreciation, the validation of the VCs. That's it. Okay, and when we filed patents, I always only filed patents for ideas that I could specifically prove that were infringed. Okay, so we typically will not file many patents for know-how around algorithms unless I can really prove that they're infringed. Otherwise, I'm just donating my knowledge for free, right? And trust the competition to use it. So anything that relates to hardware or to something, how to manufacture, etc., not on the product, just on the very basic core technologies. Only that we patented. And I also, there's the kilo patent strategy and the unique. So there are many companies that can claim that they have 100, 200 patents, 1,000 patents, and you just get lost in this wood of patents. And I thought that it's a financial burden. It's not only about the time and money that it takes to issue, it's the continuous maintenance along the 20 years or whatever of the patent. And I chose to file, I would say, only the patents that I thought that were crucial. And I would say that the majority of our patents are considered as foundational IP that no one can really argue with. Okay? So I tried to achieve the benefit without paying a huge toll. I think it's crucial. Anything that relates to IP, I mean, I assume that all your startups, it all starts and ends with IP, unique IP, right? You're not going to develop something that is not unique. So keep it very, very close to your chest. Protect it. Yeah. What's your name?
Justin, sorry.
Justin. Yeah.
You don't patent the algorithms.
I patent only, we did patent algorithms, but only such that we can prove that we're infringed. So the majority of the algorithms that we developed we consider as internal know-how, and they're not patented.
I was asking because I think the patent, we're now the first person with the patent. Is there any fear that there's something you have that somebody is going to have the right?
First of all, whenever you talk about patents, I will always agree there's always fear, right? And when you're managing IP strategy, you should be led by fear. There's always, I assume that if you dig endlessly, you'll probably find some patents that we are infringing as well. We will not be sued unless, we are on the radar map and we reach the $100 million revenue. We're not going to be sued anyway. So to tell you that I'm horribly bothered by it, I'm not. A very good way to protect yourself, if you wish, is to publish whatever you want. But I don't want to publish, right? I want to keep it in our domain. But since I said that we don't file for patents that cannot be proved that are infringed, it goes both ways, right? So if someone will be that smart and file it, he can never prove. So I'll give you examples. Like we have many software patents, let's say for fusion of, we provide stereoscopic vision of the tissue, but now the surgeon wants to enter the body minimal invasively. So we can fuse the MRI, CT, or angio, whatever, in real time. So now they will see the aorta, they will see the ribs, they will see the heart, okay, and they can enter very, very accurately. Now this is a new concept, and for that we filed many patents, okay? That can relatively easily be proved that these are infringed. But let's say that on the color algorithms, we have really unique color algorithms, and instead of just doing, a simple RGB, we chose 4 complementary colors, and we do different color calculations according to the signal-to-noise ratio, etc. Really very complicated, but there is no chance that we will ever be able to know that a competitor or other company use this knowledge. How can I prove it, right? No way. So we didn't patent it. We just kept it as internal know-how. So, and every case, we sit and spend a lot of time discussing whether it's worth filing, because every company loves that, or it's just a waste of time and money. It's not an easy decision, you know. Your ego wants to file everything, but your logic says, hey, hold on, please.
I'm Andrew.
Andrew.
I've heard of companies, they call them patent trolls, where they're just big companies and all they do is they buy out patents and then they sort of headhunt on little startup companies and say, you're infringing on this patent.
Yeah.
Give us all your money or all your patents.
Yeah.
And, you know, the little companies can't afford lawyers to defend themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do anything to protect yourself from companies like that, or was that not yet an issue when you were starting out?
We did not do anything to protect ourselves. I think that we're still too small to be worried from that. I think that typically when you pass the $100 million, that's when
they start looking for you and trying to
yeah. Typically they would chase much bigger companies.
Okay.
It's a worry, but again, you have to manage I have so many other worries that
you can't take the time to worry about it.
it's even if I take the time, it's not going to help me. You know, I thought of maybe you could now pay IBM and license all their patents, etc. But when we considered it, and again, I always look at the marginal effort, marginal cost versus the marginal advantage, we found it to be at least up to date, unneeded, and I hope we were not wrong. Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Ron.
Ron.
My question is, say you have a limited amount of money.
Always. That's always the case,
Always.
right?
And now you have an option of either, so that's the option, okay? Either patent it, go, you know, pay the lawyer, pay whoever, you know, to make sure your IP is safe, and or, you know, invest into bringing a really good proof of concept of your idea. You have these two options. You know, like you're at the beginning. Like, what is your advice?
What would you advise, Ron? What do you think? Why?
Because like you said before, these VCs can get you to the next stage. They would probably rather see something physically working right than
Any other opinion? Thanks.
Also, maybe the VCs want to be able to see that, you know, someone else isn't going to take over. If you have patents, they know that their money is safe, and they're not investing in you, and then someone else is going to take it and patent your intellectual property. Then all their money is wasted.
Yeah.
So let me add a complication. So now, in order to...
Can I answer before? I would say that obviously it depends what the patent is, but I would always prioritize IP. Filing the IP, I would write to this. I would not use any lawyer if I don't have the money. I would just file a provisional without even any claim, something very, very initial that costs you more time than money. And then I would invest in the prototype. And again, the more complex and bizarre the idea is, the more you'll have to invest in this feasibility prototype, right? So this is a very general answer. It really depends on what the IP is, how unique is it, how complicated is it to develop this prototype, and how far-fetched this idea is, etc. There is no right or wrong here. Yeah, complicate things.
Yeah, so the complicating is in order to patent it and also do a proof of concept, bring some money in, that would, you know, if your company is right now evaluated at a lower cost, then I'm bringing somebody in who may be the wrong investor just because I couldn't get anybody else. I just wanted money in order to do the two things. So in a way, I cannot get them aboard if I have no proof of concept to at least some degree. I don't know. Can you comment on how much things cost, or what you're doing if you were back 13 years ago and you didn't have both worlds in a way?
Yeah, but I didn't have both worlds in a way, and you're always short of money. It's always the case. So from my experience, I would always prefer IP, okay? Because if I don't have the IP, they may not be interested, okay? With all due respect to your great proof of concept. I would go for the cheapest provisional that's less than $1,000. I mean, if you're planning to be an entrepreneur, you will incur losses that are much more than 1,000. Just your valuable time that will now be allocated and dedicated to this idea instead of doing something else and earning an alternative salary. That's the alternative cost, right? So I assume that these $1,000 or less should be, relatively insignificant to your overall loss. I mean, for me, not only that I invested hundreds of thousands, I didn't take any salary for almost a year and a half, So it wasn't easy. I tried to win the lottery, but failed. So you're burning through your savings, but an entrepreneur is not an easy profession, right? It's a high risk, high reward. I don't think that anyone or everyone should be entrepreneurs. You have to know what you're entering. Now, if you're seeking to collect lots of white hair fast, then that's definitely the way to go, okay? I mean, I would never do anything else. I don't think that anyone will hire me anyway, But it's dealing with uncertainties, continuous. It's on one hand being very stubborn with your idea that no one else understands. On the other hand, being open and flexible to listen to others and to understand that maybe you have to change your ways and to take. I mean, it's almost impossible. On one hand, you want to be ahead of the times because you want to be unique. On the other hand, if you're too far ahead, you may not have the right supporting technology, or the market may not be ripe. So it's this is why the chances of success are very low. Not to mention that you need to raise enough money and you need to hire a good team, etc., etc. It's the percentages of really successful startups, and it's always more complicated. Always. Yeah, please. Manish.
So I don't know if you ever had to stop a project.
Wow. Great question. I would say that you invest in the stock market, okay? You think that the stock is going to go up. It goes up, you're very happy, and then it starts. I mean, it probably happened to most people, right? It goes down a bit, and you're saying, never mind, it will go up, and it goes down more, and then it goes below the price that you purchased. Most people are too stubborn, or too pride, or too whatever, to just sell it and continue on with their life, okay? It may relate to a job that you may be stuck for various reasons without. So it's human nature, right? And you founded the company, and it's very difficult, but you're so proud or so stubborn or so stuck in this idea. And it happened to me as well. I mean, in Visionsense, and now I can say, because the company is successful, I founded the company definitely too early. Too early meaning 3D vision was a bad word. It's not like today that there's a hype around 3D. People associated it with headaches. There was no relevant 3D displays, not to mention 3D TVs. The semiconductor industry couldn't manufacture whatever we needed, not CMOS and not CCDs. And CPUs were not powerful enough to to implement our algorithm. So if I would have known that and I would have just waited 5 years, I would have had less white hair now. Would saved money, saved a lot. But how can you know that, right? So along the way, and if this company was founded in 98, you had the 2001, 2002 dot-com crash. Investors stopped investing in anything. And back then we had a product that we were just launching worldwide. And I tried to raise here with Piper Jaffray $20 million to build up the sales force. Guess how much I raised? So I had to fire, we were 35 people, I think like 10 in the US and 15 in the US and 20 in Israel. I had to fire all of the sales, marketing, support forces, had to fold all the operation, left with only my PhDs. I had like 7 PhDs, but I left only the core team and entered the bunker for probably 2 years. and eventually relocated to the US in '94 after 3 bridge loans. And at every given point, until then it was an amazingly successful company. And we hit all our milestones, etc. And at any given point, with so much difficulties in raising money, I sat with my wife, who's my best friend, and she's much smarter than me, typically over tea at night, and asked ourselves, is it worth it? Should we continue? Should we stop? I mean, you could do something else with your life, right? Is it worth it? And I think it's very, very difficult, and you never know the alternative. I mean, if you would have done this or if you would have done that, right? But I think that it's something that is crucial, very important, and almost impossible. So in my case, every time we decided to continue, and maybe we were lucky that we did it, because this company could have been belly up, 6-7 years ago easily. But I think it's against human nature. You're so biased and you're so into your idea that it's very, very difficult to stop and move on to something else. Very difficult. Yeah.
Again, so if the FDA were involved, I don't know if it is or not, or some big government oversight body was involved, would you still do it? And what would the challenge be?
What do you mean involved?
Yeah, like so with implantable medical devices like pacemakers and all that, the FDA regulates that kind of stuff. There's a long process, right? Were you subject to any of that stuff, or?
Yeah, of course.
You were, okay. And how did you work through it?
I would say the biggest fear of an electrical engineer, of even thinking to enter the medical field, is this FDA black cloud, okay? And what you know is that it's going to take forever, they're going to block you, they're going to disturb you. And when you learn the facts, you learn that there are different submissions, okay? There is a PMA, there's 510K, it depends on the class, etc. And as a CEO, you can try to control the submission, okay? And after learning a lot, I understood that it's much better, at least in our case, to lower the claims to a minimum, really minimum, and submit a 510K, which is you're saying that you're substantially equivalent to other products that were already cleared. That's the fastest, 3 months, and you get the clearance. And after we had that, we took another small step, another small claim, and we filed that. And after that, another small claim and filed that. And this is what we're doing up to this date. Every time, another small step, okay? So I cannot say that even up to this date, after 13 years, all the claims that we would like are approved by the FDA. And whatever is not approved, you cannot PR, etc. But surgeons are talking about it, and I'm fine, and we're selling systems, so I'm fine with that. So you really... like any system, you have to find the path of least resistance. And I would say that retrospectively, the FDA was never a big deal for us. Really, remember, we are a medical technology. We're not pharmaceuticals. We are not implantables, okay? And so you will probably hear a very different story from pharmaceuticals or from implantables.
So, yeah, I mean, if you put all the claims together, if you batch them up, then you can be more efficient. But then there's a probability of failure, right? So you have a lot of small claims so that you can make sure that each small claim is more likely to get through.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. Okay, the image fusion. Okay, the ability to see through tissue. If I would have filed now an image fusion, I would have definitely gotten a PMA, which would have killed the project. Okay, so initially we fielded stereoscopic vision, and then we did 3D surface reconstruction, and then we did 3D measurements, and every step by step, very, very small steps, and this is something that the FDA can chew and swallow, okay?
Makes sense, cool.
So again, path of least resistance. I mean, the biggest issue from my perspective after so many years is not the FDA, it's probably finance. A CEO should do whatever the company needs, whether it's to tie the shoelace of his workers because they don't know, or to make great espressos so they can work more, or to raise money, whatever is needed, right, at any given moment. And unfortunately, we hit the 2001-2002 crisis, and we hit the 2008 crisis, and I probably spent years of my life chasing investors and raising money. And trust me, this is no fun. Okay, and maybe one of the reasons that I did not want to continue to be a CEO and I chose to be a CTO is because I had it, you know. And although the company does not need more funding, I just, you know, it's so much nicer to play with the technology versus, again, that's personal. So money, I think, and you cannot claim that our technology is not complicated or difficult. We invented the wheel on many fronts, but still, even though you're dealing with uncertainty that relates to technology, financial uncertainty is much, much worse. And when you know that you might have to fire your workers that you love and appreciate because you can't pay them the check, that's so much worse. So that's stress and work. Okay.
So follow-up question. Did you have to do any clinical trials?
No. We always had such low claims that up to this date we were never demanded. No. Never. But again, that I would say we were very, very humble in the claims, and we tried to minimize the claims to minimum. I will always prefer to provide our equipment to surgeons that will investigate research and publish. And we have many articles stating, and that surgeons stating the advantages of Visionsense versus Studio versus the microscope. Okay? But there the FDA would accept it. It's unlike if we would claim that, we would have to go through.
And did you have to be certified before the surgeon could try it, or could they try it in, limited areas?
Both. If you have a product that is already cleared by the FDA, and let's say it's cleared for neurosurgery, it's not cleared for orthopedics. If the orthopedic surgeon chooses to, he can use it off-label. You're not allowed to promote him to use it, but if he chooses to, he could do it. Okay? But it was already cleared, meaning it was safe from a biocompatibility, electrical, etc. And it was substantially equivalent to something else. I'm saying it's not that difficult. It's, from my perspective, it's more the legend and the fear than the reality. I mean, in medical technology, again, not in pharmaceuticals and not in implantables. Please.
You have the technological and how did you bring the teams to commercialize your product?
First of all, I did not have the technological expertise, no. And I would say I was probably more on the... I had probably lots of managerial experience by then. This is my third company. So definitely this is not the case. Now, when you read case studies, you see that companies that were co-founded by a few founders have a better chance. But in my case, I was the only founder. I did not have any co-founder, unfortunately. And as I said, I was a CEO till less than a year ago. So I managed this company for many, many years, up to the point that now it's really doing well, and I can, you know, I can take more vacation and enjoy life. And no, it was not. I knew the statistics, and I'm very much a team guy. I'm not. But all my friends, with no exception, all the technologists are on the IT side, and no one would ever cross the border and choose medical unless he has a brain tumor. It's just not something that you do, okay? The IT markets are much bigger, more successful, barriers to entry are so much lower that I would have never been able to convince anyone to leave this golden field and join this, you know, I don't know even how to call it, you know. So medical technology is definitely much more difficult than regular technology, because in addition to all the technological barriers, you have all the medical barriers and even a bit of FDA. Okay? On the other hand, if you're successful and if you manage to cross all these barriers, you can laugh all the way to the bank, right? You will have a product that will last longer. I mean, in IT, you'd have to continuously, every 3 years, it's a new generation. In medical, maybe it's 5 or 7. You will have less competition, and this is what we enjoy now. We passed all these barriers, took us forever, but now we're all alone there in a great market, you know, with no competition. But I was not able to convince any of my friends. No way, no chance. No chance. I would have loved to. I knew the statistics. Okay, Mototech I co-founded with a friend. Eldat I didn't co-found, but I was among the 3 leaders in this company. So I always worked in a team, never alone. Yeah.
Avi, if you consider me a friend, count me in.
I wish I had. How do you hire a good team, right? You're all alone. You have your few dollars. How can you hire a good team? I mean, they're going to ask you how many months of cash do you have in the bank, right? That's almost impossible, right? How do you hire people that can really serve you long term? We all know that to become really an expert in a field, you need to work, I don't know, 10,000 hours. You know, any outliers. You can name any, but it's many years. And the last thing that you want is after you hire someone, and they spend years, eventually they leave you, right? And again, we invented the wheel, so it's not that I can hire someone with this knowledge. I will have to, even me myself, I had to learn everything from scratch. I knew nothing, you know. So when you look at companies, you see that workers completely leave and join and leave and join. And I'm very proud that up to this day, no worker ever left this company. Okay, and I was able to, definitely to this date, to keep Visionsense attractive, I think, on a personal, on a professional, on obviously salary, whatever option basis. And Visionsense now has this very unique team, not group, but team of experts in the various fields. Okay, so I was able, for somehow probably lucky, to be able to keep this amazing talent in the company. This is very difficult. How did I hire? So if it's R&D, typically word of mouth. Either I knew them. I served in a technological unit in the army, so my best soldier eventually joined me, and I hired from the Weizmann Institute PhDs that I knew. Again, no one knew anything, but I chose extremely smart and open, and people that I knew that can learn and love learning a new field. But only either I knew them personally, or I got a very warm recommendation from someone that worked with them. You know what's the success rate of interviews? What's your ability to predict after even a long interview whether this worker will be successful, contributing or not, stay long-term, short-term? Give a number. Sorry? 50%? 50%, I mean, if you have a successful interview, 50% chances that this worker will be great. Any other opinion here? Yeah. 10%. 20. Last number. Who said? You're right. 0. Can you believe that? 0%. Your predictability is 0. Whether you interviewed them or just accepted them as is, same result. Can you believe it? This is reality, okay? So the only way to know whether a worker will do well or not, it's insane, but this is the truth. Very difficult to accept it. The only way to do it is either that you have worked with them or you worked with someone that you trust that worked with them. That's the only way to know, okay? I never took any risk. For me, the people are the most important and unique and whatever asset of the organization. I never hired, from the newspaper or from job. Only people that knew people. In the worst, people that I trusted that knew them. Yeah. And again, I chose to have a very small organization, to focus only on our very unique IP, and to outsource anything else. Because the company has high margins, we could do that. Okay. So up to this date. The core team in Israel is maybe 20 people, most of them PhDs, each with a decade of expertise, typically in Visionsense already. and they focus either on the semiconductor or algorithms. And we outsource up to this date, whether it's development of a system or mechanical engineering. All of these, they work with us 10 years, but they're outsourced. I don't want them in the team, and I think that by that, A, I gain better expertise because they work not only with Visionsense but with other companies, and B, I maintained a very small team that is closer, works better, etc. And that's not something that you typically find in a company. Okay, I don't know if it's good or not. I mean, for Visionsense, it works very well. We do not manufacture anything. We outsource everything on a global basis. We work whether it's with a Japanese company for the CCD or Canadian for the CMOS or German for the optics, and we always try to find the best source in the world or number two. We just don't compromise, okay? So the system here is probably has, I don't know, built from blocks from at least 20 countries all over. And today it's not an issue with this global world today. It's really not an issue to manage, and it's very, very easy. So we don't manufacture anything, and we don't compromise on the level of manufacturing, level of the product, level of just no compromises. Which is, you know, it's true for this case, again, for a product with such a high gross margin. It's not true for many other products, right? But I assume that for a company, and most of you will probably develop a company with serious IP, you should expect high margins and some uniqueness. And this should probably be a closer model to you. I mean, even if I wanted, I'm not going to build a fab, and I'm not going to, can't afford it, right? Yeah.
I'm Enrique.
Enrique.
You said that there's a lot of stuff that you haven't patented that's internal knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume that you've never filed a method patent, and how do you deal with method patents that are already?
Good question. We never filed the method patent, you're right. And up to this date, we're not aware of any method patent that we are infringing whatsoever. What we're doing is so unique that we don't have an issue. Up to my knowledge, you know, I may not know. Yeah. I never wasted efforts on any method patent. I mean, we have such unique patents on the semiconductor and the algorithms. We even invented clinical procedures. These are so unique that I'm sure any patent could always be bypassed, always, okay? But if you now look, IP is not just patents. IP is the know-how that you gained. It's the manufacturing. You know, even if I'll provide you all the knowledge, it will take you a few years and millions of dollars to be able to manufacture this small chip, okay? So why should I now spend more money and more time on writing method patents? I mean, I feel so confident, and I hope I'm not mistaken, that I didn't find any need for it.
So in any of your inventions, were you putting together different parts that were already patented and then provided a new IP?
No.
Imaging and algorithm?
No. As I said, most of our patents are foundational and pretty unique. No. We really invented the wheel. I'm not joking when I said it. I'm saying it. Yeah, and you understand why. This is why I did not choose kilo patent strategy, but really a few and unique. So tens of patents and not hundreds, but each of them really foundational. Welcome. Again, it fits Visionsense. It does not mean that this is the right strategy for you. You have to weigh every case and decide what's good for you, depending on the industry, depending on what's common, depending on your funding, on the time that you have, etc., etc. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lori.
Lori, hi.
How do you decide
So I think I have a very critical opinion here. I think that when you're really dealing with high tech, we focus on only what was unique for us. Okay, so only for patents that we filed, we developed that internally. Okay, and whatever we did not file patents, we outsourced. We could have probably filed many more patents, but we have, it's a mistake to say we have more than needed, but we have enough, okay? So I'll give you examples, okay? So the sensor is protected by many patents, but that's outsourced just because it's too expensive. You know, we can't have our own fab, but the fab is signed on many NDAs, and everything that they developed with us for us is unique for us, etc. And we also made them sign that if they will come up with any unique IP that relates to manufacturing or know-how or whatever, that will belong to Visionsense and not to them, because obviously we paid for the development of the manufacturing process as well as the manufacturing. Algorithms, I already said. Anything that relates to the system, I mean, this is a big system with a computer with many cards inside and LED illumination and many of that stuff, and the cable is unique and most of it is unique. We outsource that, and we never even bothered to patent, although there is a lot of know-how. But many times the know-how relates to the integration of the various components and not to the specific component. Or even if there is IP in this specific component, it's not going to help the competition even if they get this component, because they lack the overall integration, the IP of the integration, okay? So again, I'm talking from a lot of confidence because I know how far-fetched this multidisciplined, crazy technological product is, and I'm not sure that this is the case for any other products, okay? Yeah. Scott, hi.
Can you talk about fundraising, trials and tribulations, approaching VC or pay target?
You want me to start crying now or later? So first of all, like any good managerial answer, the best answer for you is it depends, okay? It depends on the stage, it depends on who you approach. But I would say, generally speaking, I found that VCs, as I said, are conservative, and it's better to approach them later down the road. It's better to develop some personal contact. They love following you up and checking that you hit your milestones. So while with a seed round, I didn't have that option, later on, I already, and I knew many VCs because it's my third company, and I knew which VCs, by the way, to approach and which VCs I would never want on my board, because that's a Catholic marriage. You cannot get divorced. I mean, a divorce meaning that they will kick you out. They're not going to be kicked out, okay? So I was always very, very measured and cautious, but the ones that I did appreciate, I tried to keep a long-term relationship with. Same, by the way, related to bankers. I probably over-invested efforts, and I don't think that it yielded the results that I needed, because again, all of the downturns in the economy, etc. So this is one. B, in every round of finance, it's very important that the current shareholders will invest, but I think it's critical that you'd always have at least one new investor to have what's called fresh blood. So for the next round, because they dehydrate over time, it's very important to always have fresh blood that will want to continuously invest. A VC makes the first investment, gets to know you better, but when they invest, they already allocate probably double or triple or quadruple the funding for later rounds, okay? I always kept my investors up to date with good news and with bad news. I was always very, very upfront. And in the second round that we did, in the middle of the second round, we hit a horrible technological issue that we didn't even know how to deal with, up to the point that my VP of R&D, which was older and more experienced than me, told me that I'm just taking this company to nowhere and I'm irresponsible. And he almost had most of the management there think the same. And I basically, which is not typical for me, I fired him. I fired all the managers that said that they don't believe, took over the management of the product. And by the way, after I think 6 months, solved all issues and had the system out the door. But I was in the middle of a financing round. And I was upfront and disclosed all the issues and all the problems. And some of the investors folded and decided not to invest. Okay, so that was a horrible price that I paid. But later on, I gained their appreciation. And guess what happened in the next round? They not came back. It was the first time because they folded. It was new investors. But in the next round, they invested. And since then, they're probably been, great supporters. So I always believe that, telling the truth sometimes is very, very difficult. But for the long run, it's always preferable. So I always maintained a relatively close relationship. I updated them for good and for bad. I had, up to this date, I have every 3 months, I have a shareholder update because we have too many shareholders and I have no chance to pick up the phone and call each and every one of them. I would say I very much pamper my shareholders and I highly appreciate the fact that they chose to invest in Visionsense. And it's important for me to show that they were right. Once I made a mistake, in 2008, it was the last financial round, and I was living here in California, even Palo Alto. It was horrible times, and I couldn't really raise any funding, and eventually I closed the round led by an investor that I knew that we're not going to get along. But it was either that or the company might go belly up. And I did it, and up to this date, I'm not sure that I made the right step. You have to get along, right? But he's not my type of character, and I would never go out or spend quality time with him. Unlike many of other investors that I'm really friends with, and we go out, and I know the families, and et cetera, et cetera. So you really have to pick your investors, but sometimes you have to compromise and you don't have any other choice. A long answer to probably a very complicated question, and unlike technology, for me, technology is very simple. It may be not simple, but I always see the clear way out of the biggest trouble. Finance is for me, is much, much worse. Okay, sometimes you're dealing with people, I'm sorry to say that are not as smart as you, but their ego is pumped up sky high. And it took me many years to mature also as a manager and to understand how to deal with them and what do they want to hear and how to probably better behave, okay? When I was young, I was almost snotty, So I was definitely taught many, many lessons, and what? Today I take with appreciation and thank you, although I did not enjoy. You have to deal with people that you may not appreciate, that are not smart, but they have a pile of money that you need. What can you do? The conventional way is that you will develop a business plan. You should scrutinize as much as you can because they're going to scrutinize it much more. They're going to send you to a lot of work, additional work, and I try to take it the positive way, that this way I can learn more. But if you ask me, I would say they're wasting my time, okay? I can say generally that, and I probably had tens of VCs over my 3 companies. The typical VC says that he will help you, and he's not going to help you. And to this day, don't tell it to anyone. I would prefer a VC that would just let me do my work or maybe help a bit. I did have a few investors that did help, but if you compare their claims to whatever they did, it may be me, that for some reason, it's difficult to work with me or I did not allow them or whatever. As a CEO, you always take all the blame. But I found them to be claiming too much and to doing too little. You can never raise too much money. You're always short in cash. Always raise much more than you need. Calculate how much do you need in time and money for the next milestone. Next milestone is a milestone that you could close a much higher valuation, right? And always take a 50% margin. Shop it around as much as you can. For me, valuation was less important. The quality of the investor was more important. I cared less about my dilution and more about, again, the quality, because I knew that as I said, you're married for life. Always raise more than you need. You'll never regret it. Never, ever. The time you spend as a CEO in raising money, you could have developed your company further. So it's a very precious time. Okay? So from my perspective, it was worth being diluted more, but minimizing the time that I would need to allocate for the next round, etc. Okay? Again, this is my personal perspective, and different people will have different opinions. It's 7:10. I don't know till when do we have and how many more questions? Yeah, please.
Jordan again. I just was wondering, a lot of us are kind of budding entrepreneurs, have ideas. Every time we come to one of these seminars, try to get the background story. You mentioned this is your third company. So.
And last. I promised my wife.
That was one of them, so you don't want to move on to another company.
I will never be CEO again. I will invest in companies. I'm helping entrepreneurs all the time. I promised my wife, no more CEO.
I mean, I don't know about everyone here, but for me, I've started a company myself, a proper company before, and I'm thinking, what was the very earliest thing that you did that really kind of ramped up to this? Because it sounds like you had quite a bit of money behind you when you started Visionsense, which really enabled it to happen. I mean, if you were going to start Visionsense, didn't have those two companies behind you, would have even been able to done things completely differently, or had to do things completely differently. Because a lot of us, I know, are from biology backgrounds, school medicine here, and there is a huge barrier to entry as the FDA and a lot of the regulation. So whereas some of these guys can go make an iPhone app for practically free, become a millionaire, we need millions up front to get something going. How can you comment on moving from literally nothing to sort of a company that does what you do?
So it's a very good question, Jordan, and obviously I went through lots of rounds of finance, another small step, but how do you start? So in the beginning, your time is very cheap and money is very precious, and there's always a trade-off. And maybe now my time is very expensive. I'm not saying money is not precious, but I'm willing to pay much more to save my time because I don't have enough time. In the beginning, you pay with your time, and if needed, you will take a part-time job to fund your endeavor, right? And you will manage. I mean, if it's important to you, you'll manage. There is no right or wrong answer. You will do the best that you can. I could have chosen not to invest my money and to do it much, much slower. Retrospectively, it would probably have been a much better idea, right? Seriously, it would have been a better idea. It would have taken more time. Everything would have progressed. Do the best that you can. There's no right and wrong here. I don't know if I answered or...
It is a difficult multi-part question, so hopefully it's spurred on some of a lot of other questions.
Jordan, entrepreneurship is difficult, okay? It's very difficult and it's very rewarding. By the way, I think that it's rewarding. It's not only just the financial side. I couldn't care less about money. It's rewarding as a human being. For me, it's rewarding that my stupid invention is saving people all over the world today. It's just amazing for me. I'm saving, as we talk here, someone is saved somewhere in this world, or probably more than one. It's rewarding probably on the personal journey that I started as a young, cocky, thinking that I'm the smartest guy on earth, to learn that it's much better to be a bit more humble and to treat people with more respect. And I learned many, many lessons. And of course, lots of technology and lots of medical and lots of, regular academic. So you earn a lot. And even, let's say that you had a startup that failed. So it may have failed financially, but you have gained a lot of knowledge that will serve you in your next whatever. whether it's your startup or not. Okay, so this is the way I treat life now, and I would have not spoken like this 20 years ago. Okay, so all your life you gain, right? How much of what is different, and you chose the biological, and other people chose the IT, and that's good for you, that's good for them, and if they make millions, I'm only happy for them. You know, they deserve it. By the way, it's a very condensed market, and it's not that easy. You know, the grass of the neighbor always looks greener. It's not that easy to make $1 million on some app, right? You have to be the first. It's not that easy. That's it. Yeah.
My name's Alex.
Alex.
It's kind of an abstract question, but I'm sure there's a lot of like fun stuff, like a lot of ideas going on, you know, like with technology. So how do you stay focused? Like, you know, let's say that you're working on early stage of Visionsense. Another great idea for something else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you force yourself to kind of stick to it? Kind of abstract.
No, it's completely true, and I would say that I typically have a few, I think, good ideas a year. Okay, that they could have become a startup, but I've decided strategically that I'm dedicated now to Visionsense. I write them down because I tend to forget. Sometimes I even would file a patent if I think it's critical. But at any given moment, you have to decide where do you allocate your efforts. I can tell you up front that to try and manage a few things at once typically does not work. I'm not saying that whether you can multitask or not. It's not, you know, most of the people in this room can probably multitask very well. It's whether you can manage a few different endeavors, and typically every startup will demand 300% of your time as is, right? You'll never be able to provide the time, efforts, etc. that it needs. That will not be successful. So you should choose your path and try to choose the best one. Defocusing is never right. I would say that on an engineering level, and I love the way Google work, that I typically like to give my engineers like not one day, but several hours every week to do something else, you know, like a freebird. And I think that, or even help some other company or whatever, some out of the box. And I think that long term it will yield better workers, better results, higher quality, etc., etc. So I'm very much open architecture type, and I'm doing it myself. I'm helping, and I will be more than happy to help each and every one of you if you wish with anything. But you know, very, very limited in time. That's it. I believe in being focused, no doubt. You have to. And I can easily be extremely defocused, and I'm always interested in everything, and I'm the endless curious guy, you know. But you have to stay focused. You have to.
Can you talk about what you learned in your MBA and what, I guess, under what conditions, you know, it might be worthwhile for one of us to pursue them?
First of all, I think that unlike the engineering degrees, MBA is an art. So I think that it's, to me, it was more beneficial after already having managerial experience, okay? I think that just doing a theoretical MBA is almost a waste of time, okay? I think it's much better to work a few years, manage people, manage projects, manage budgets, and then when you do your MBA, you can accumulate additional tools that will take you to the next level, okay? So I definitely learned more marketing and sales, you know, some financing. I definitely gained friends and contacts. That's it by and large. It was probably the easiest degree that I did. You know, it's not demanding as engineering. And I maybe even enjoyed it more because I was more ripe. Okay, is it critical? You know, 50% of, I think, the graduate degrees in the US now are MBA, so it's definitely inflated big time, right? Did it help me? Yes. Could I have managed without it? Of course. So I think it's a personal decision that you have to make. It's how many years are we going to spend in university, right? And what could we do with this alternative cost, right? What could you do with your time? He chose to do a PhD. I chose not to do a PhD. And I chose to allocate these 5 years to developing something else. I don't know, there's no right or wrong. Many times I still have this dream to do my PhD and enjoy every minute, you know. Whatever fits you. That's what's so nice, right? There is no single right or wrong answer. Last question. Yes.
My name is Andrew.
Andrew, hi.
So you see partners in the technology, but often about that conflict. Most of us like we don't really want to deal with the money side, right? But then you know the path is you reconcile.
I think you answered it, right? It's. I would have loved to desert the CEO. I mean, I'm not into titles, and I couldn't care less about it. But I knew that I needed an American CEO, and to really attract a good CEO, good commercial CEO, I have to hand him a company at the right stage. Otherwise, they would not be interested. For me, it took many, many years of fighting with the technology and the finance. But once we reach a stage that we had market presence, that we have nice growth in the sales, I was able to attract a good CEO. Before that, I could have searched and either found some failure that has nothing else to do in his life, or and another thing, there is some entrepreneurial spirit that only you will have. You're also going to be the #1 expert in your field because you invented. You're the first one, you know, and you have much more experience than others. And this is what I'm trying to do now, to focus my efforts and my time to contribute to this company with whatever I'm expert with, and not wasting my time on finances or pushing sales reps that anyone else can do. So if you're the technological guy, just I think that unless you have a partner and you co-found the company, and I think that's the best idea. He will focus on the business, you will focus on the technology. You will have to suffer and swallow all these pills all along the way, up to the point that your company develops and mature enough to be attractive enough to a good CEO. Because again, when you read case studies, and I love learning from other people's experience, there are so many companies that brought on either too early or just the wrong CEO, and guess what happened to them? It's a very, very good point, Andrew. Karen.
Yeah, I wanted to comment a bit about the cultural differences.
So, of course, there are many, many generalizations, right? Thanks. That Israelis are rude. They have no patience whatsoever. They shove their nose into everything, right? They're curious about everything. That's the downside. The advantages is that probably with a smaller team, you could develop things faster. I'm not saying better from a quality perspective, but to reach the goal faster. They're more multidisciplined, much more aggressive. And I think that in this global world today, there's no reason to compromise. So while all the sales, marketing, business development are American, okay? Most of the technological guys are Israeli, okay? And as I said, manufacturing, I have in Canada and in Japan, and so I try to choose a trait. And the question is, once you have all these different people, how do they communicate? My God, you know, so when an American says maybe, it's different than when an Israeli says maybe, right? When an Israeli manager tells his Israeli worker, I would like you to do this, the Israeli hears, he recommended, I'll choose whether to do it or not, right? This is the way it works. And I have American VPs and I have Israeli VPs, and I knew that all along. So every 3 months we meet somewhere, either in Europe, Israel, or the US, every 3 months for a management 1 week. And during this 1 week, in addition to meetings, you know, and strategy, we take 1 day of hiking somewhere. okay? And every time, by the end of this week, you know, they hug and they're best friends and couldn't believe it. And now every Monday morning, we have a management meeting. So we just landed back from Israel from a great week. Everyone is hyped. And we have this Monday call. What do you think happens then? Everyone during the weekend had their knives, you know, already well, you know, so they can carve their. I find it unbelievable how much people that even have mutual appreciation and enjoy working together can still not get along, or I'm exaggerating, but not understand each other. When he says maybe and he says yes and he says, and up to this date, if there's one issue that I have to manage continuously, it's the multicultural differences, okay? Now, in this day and age, we have a German manufacturer, okay? And you know that German is pünktlich, right? What they say is exactly like that, and if they gave you a schedule, you'll have it on time. Not anymore, right? So, and we have a German manufacturer that is so late, and we have Israeli manufacturers that are on time, you know. But generally speaking, it's something that you will have to manage on a daily and weekly basis, continuously for the lifetime of this company. Okay, I have another CEO friend who has even a more global company also in the Far East, and every week he has this, again, video or phone conference with all his managers, with all the time differences, etc. And he says the same. There is no other way to manage it. They have to meet face-to-face as often as they can. They have to spend a lot of time together on the phone. And they should be aware of the fact that he says A and she hears a B. But he meant A. It's continuous, non-stop, okay? Again, so the advantage is that you'll be more multicultural. You'll benefit from the advantages of the different cultures. And the downside is that you'll have many misunderstandings. And it's very important for the whole organization to embrace this multicultural and to understand in advance that there will be misunderstanding. Okay, it's a serious issue. Again, advantage, disadvantage. Continuous, I can't explain. I have people working 5, 6, 7 years together. They would still clash. Still. They would still not understand each other. Even me. I live here 7 years. Sometimes I don't understand Americans. You know, they say something, or I can say something, and they would tell me, and we're good friends. Avi, this sounds so aggressive, you know. It's just because I probably translate from Hebrew, and I'm not aggressive at all, none whatsoever. But still, they would say, you sound very, very aggressive. And I tell them, thank you, and what should I do different? And I try to improve. Continuous issue, nonstop. But as managers, you know, intelligent people want to solve problems, want to perhaps forecast issues and deal with them in advance, right? We like that. The last thing that we want is some boring job from 8 to 5, right? To do tomorrow what I did yesterday. So on one hand, we are problem solvers. On the other hand, you might not enjoy it when you tackle all these problems and issues. Thank you. Good luck.